Yo, 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 what's up, YouTube? So we got another nice little video for you today. It's Saturday, July 15th. On Friday, July 14th, I was getting ready to start a league pretty late at night. I was planning on like waking up early Saturday, playing in the challenge, but I started a league Friday night and had the thought of, okay, if I trophy this league, I'll get up and play the challenge because like I'll feel pretty confident about my list. I feel like I'm in a pretty good spot meta wise, and I'll just send it. I'll just go ahead and jump into the challenge and go crazy. So I started off this league like 3-0, and I just could not keep my eyes open. Like I was passing out playing these games. And so I was just like, all right, I'm going to go to bed and I'll get up tomorrow, finish out the league. And if I trophy, I'll start up the challenge. If I don't trophy, then I'll just finish up the league and go do whatever else. And as you can see, we didn't start up the challenge because I woke up late. So I actually got up, finished up my last two matches, ended up trophying with this league. So we're about to run through those matches. But figured I would share the league with you. Like I know I missed my promise to myself, not to you guys, to me, to play in the challenge if I trophied. And unfortunately, because of the waking up late, didn't happen. But I'll probably make up for it by like streaming one of the next challenges, maybe Sundays or something. Maybe next Saturday. I don't know yet. But let's go ahead and go over the list, get into the matches so you can see what a trophy league with Dimir Shadow looks like. As always, if you are liking the commentary, liking the content, feel free to drop a like on the video, subscription down below. Doesn't cost you anything on YouTube, just lets you know whenever this new stuff goes live. We'll have a link to the deck list down below, link to the Twitter in case you want to check out when the streams are going live. Twitter is the first place it gets updated, and a link to the Twitch channel so you can come check it out when we do go live for a challenge. But as far as the list goes, really feeling pretty good about where the list is at the moment. The biggest question mark, honestly, is the 4 Orcish Bowmaster in the main. It's a struggle to keep up with like when Bowmaster wins because it's Bowmaster, when Bowmaster wins. This is so many wins. When Bowmaster wins because it's just something with power and toughness, and when Bowmaster wins, but you would have won anyway, regardless of if you had Bowmaster or not. So many wins. I know, terrible problem to have, right? So many wins. But that's one of the reasons I keep trying Bowmaster is I'm trying to get a feel for like when it's actually doing a job that another card wouldn't be doing and when it's just a space filler. So hopefully we can see some of those spots in this league. Otherwise, like the core 4 ofs, the Shadow, Thoughtseize, Consider, Counterspell, Drown, Street Wraith have all been fantastic. Shadow of Mortality has been great. I know that's kind of, I think I'm like the only person that's pretty convinced on Shadow of Mortality. And honestly, I'm okay with that because I've run into the mirror several times where they drop like Bowmaster, they got Drown in the lock or whatever, and I play Shadow of Mortality, and it's just like, I can't get that off the board. Or you play against a red deck and they're sitting there bolting you and hitting you with haste guys and whatever, and then you drop a Shadow of Mortality, and it's just like, that's a big dude, a large lad, a very grandiose gentleman. But main deck, pretty much the stock list that we've been playing for a little bit now. Sideboard, I made a couple changes in here. Swapped the 3rd Spreading Seas and what was the other one? 3rd Spreading Seas and something for 2 Stern Scoldings. I think it was the Blood Chief's Thirst. 3rd Spreading Seas, Blood Chief's Thirst for 2 Stern Scoldings. I've been seeing a lot of like the Abzan Samwise deck, and I think Stern Scolding's a really good card against that deck because it hits not only like the halfling when you're on the play turn one, the Samwise, the cat, the Viscera Seer. It also hits Grist, which is huge. Um, and a couple of little value pieces like Skyclave Apparition, um, Gilded Goose, things like that. It can hit. The other one I've been wanting to mess around with is Dolthy in the sideboard. I played a list with 4 Dolthy in the board, and I tried playing a league with Dimir, like my Dimir with 4 Dolphin in the board, and it felt kind of clunky. But a lot of that was because I wasn't playing like Force of Negations and Subtleties. So tapping out for Dolphin on turn 2 was a really big ask. But I wanted to kind of try it over here. I was impressed when Dolphin landed in like the other list. It gave you a lot of free wins. So I wanted to give that a shot. The only other change of note is in the main deck, you will notice a basic swamp. I'm trying out the basic swamp because of the Dolphin in the board. Just giving me like more 2 mana or more times that I need double black on turn 2. And so I cut the Otawara for the swamp, so I can still have my double island through Blood Moon, swamp through Blood Moon. And I figured I'd give that a shot to see what it looked like. But I do not have enough data to say whether or not the swamp's going to be a fixture going forward. I just wanted to point out that it is there. So anybody that says like, oh, swamp's better, you have to play the swamp. Just remember, I am testing it out. So, match number 1, we are on the play. Pretty good hand, like Thoughtseize into Bowmaster or Double Drown, Fatal Push, whatever. We see Teferi, iteration on Holy Heat. So, probably like Jeskai, Fair, Breach. But usually you'd expect them to be running Giganta. So, I don't know why they wouldn't be unless it's like not Jeskai Breach. So they tapped or brought in the Sacred Foundry tapped. They went to pay costs, so I'm kind of assuming that they meant to play that untapped, in which case we would have responded to it with Bowmaster. Would have been a little awkward, but kind of whatever. Fight over a Heat. They end up having a second one, but that's A-okay because now we're down to like Teferi versus our Goblin Army token. We do have the counterspell for Teferi. And even though we don't have a big clock, we've got a clock. But this is absolutely raise the alarm mode on Bowmaster. Just 2 mana, 2 1/1s. Okay. So it's combo breach. It's not fair breach. That's good to know. Really good to know. That's going to be a very big difference for how we attack post board. So if you don't know the combo, let's back it up just a tad here. If you don't know the combo, Grinding Station, you can tap it, sacrifice an artifact, and mill 3 cards. So you play your free artifact spells like Mishra's Bauble and Mox Amber. You sack that to Grinding Station, mill 3 cards, use Underworld Breach to be able to escape that free artifact for the cost of 3 cards, which conveniently is what you're milling over. So when that artifact comes back into the battlefield, it untaps Grinding Station. Grinding Station has a trigger that says, hey, when an artifact enters the battlefield, you can untap it. So you untap it when you replay your free artifact in the yard, mill it again, replay it, mill it again, replay it, or sack it, replay it, sack it, replay it, sack it, replay it. And you have 2 kill options, depending on the list you're up against. One of them is Thassa's Oracle. So they mill themselves all the way out. As long as they have an extra card in the yard, they can exile whatever else, hit the Thassa's Oracle, cast it from the yard with escape, win on the spot, or they have Grape Shot. in which case they can mill themselves a bunch, grape shot you again if they have to, if they have the mana, whatever the case may be. But sometimes it's good to let them combo out in a situation like this to see what the win condition is. But honestly, in my experience from like the shadow side, it doesn't really matter what the win condition is. Like, we're not changing up much to fight either version. So, like, I could bring in Flusterstorm thinking it could be the Grape Shot version. But if my plan works, then I'm not going to be worrying about the breach aspect anyway. Like, I'm going to be fighting over breaches, or I'm going to have Dolphy or Unlicensed Hearse or something like that to beat breach. So, sideboarding, Dolphy's definitely coming in because I want to exile stuff that's going to their yard. Spreading Seas comes in to fight over Urza's Saga. The extra dress downs come in for Saga tokens, construct tokens. And I'm boarding out like some Wraiths. I boarded out a couple Bowmasters because they're good against Ragavan. They're kind of bad against like everything else, especially when your opponent's not like cracking their bauble tokens or cracking their baubles, not bauble tokens. But like Bowmaster's okay at just putting a couple bodies on board to maybe like chump block a construct. But I don't think that's what the matchup's really about. You really need to like knock out all the constructs. So like Dress Down, EE, Spreading Seas all do a really good job of stopping the construct plan. So opponent's gonna Aether Spellbomb back by Dolphy. Double Emery means they are gonna get to resolve one of those, unfortunately. But I do get a little bit of a Bowmaster trigger. Again, this is one of those situations where the Bowmaster I don't think really matters. Like, I think the Dolphy is way more important than the Bowmaster. The Bowmaster ended up being like ping for 2 and have an army attack for 2. So that was a few points of damage. But I think if we win that game, it's because of Dolphy. It's not because of Bowmaster. Unless they were just sitting on like a copy of the Ring or something. But either way, on to game 3. Since opponents playing it pretty slow with Saga, we get to play it a little slow with like setting up our threats. We do have a lot of interactions. We can fight over Saga tokens. So I got a little greedy there, just like fetching up a tap land. I could have fetched up an untapped source and had this shadow here. Like, I'm really not that upset about the line because I just have a bunch of good interaction, but it was an option that I had to wait on the fetch and kind of see what happened. But at the end of the day, like, I got a shadow down. I've got counter spells, so no real reason to be too picky about it. So not tapping off of Stub and Drown. I just want to like attack, get Murktide down, hold up Stubborn Denial, protect myself from a combo kill. They do have mana for Unholy Heat if they have one of those, but since it's just a ring, we'll just counter it, untap, dress down, move on with our day. Sweet. So I do believe if your meta or your expected meta, if you're going to an event, is a bunch of ring decks, then I do think this version of Dimir is really, really good against the ring decks. You've got the Bowmasters, Stub, Drown, Counter Spell, fairly quick clock if you decide to be ultra aggressive. Like, these are those situations that I always want to talk about when I bring up like why I like Dimir Shadow, and it's this ability to turn the corner very aggressively. For example, my opponent just played Bomat Courier on 1, mountain, so I'm assuming they're like a lightning bolt deck, so I'm not going to go all in on getting the shadow down turn 2. But if their turn 1 had been, say, what's it called, a delighted halfling or something, then I would have the ability to just go like turn 1, fetch, shock, dismember the delighted halfling. All of a sudden I'm at 13, untap, shock in Watery Grave, play out a shadow with stub back up or soft stub back up. And all of a sudden, like, I've got a threat down on turn 2. I've got counter spells. If I find another fetch land, then I've got a ferocious shadow. I'm almost a shadow of mortality. Like, it adds up very, very quickly. And now that I've got Shadow of Mortality and happen to find this other fetch land, like I can get down Shadow of Mortality, hold up stub, be mana efficient. So the next turn I can like Shadow, hold up double stub if nothing happens. Because more than likely they're just going to do this where they sit on Urza Saga for a turn, make a couple constructs. Like that's fantastic for me. I get more setup time. I get my extra threat down. Now I've got Shadow with triple blue spells up. Maybe they play a threat I care about and I want to consider maybe find a removal spell. Maybe opponent just attacks and I get to counter a bunch of stuff. They've already played their land drop, so everything's kind of face value now. I know that I don't have to counter this bolt. I know that it resolves. The other 2 threats hit me and I'm good to go. Like Shadow's not going to die not going to die because of state-based actions, because of them hitting me at the same time that Swift Spear hits the Shadow. I know, but I've got a stub. I can't take it to game 2. I might as well cast it. Who knows? Opponent could have like double gut shot or something. It's just not worth it. Like not worth taking the risk, I mean. But sideboarding, I treated this sideboarding a lot like Burn, just a bunch of Wraiths out, like a couple Thoughtseizes out. The only difference was I did bring in Spreading Seas and the extra dress down because we saw Urza's Saga. So that is a card that can be a nightmare to play against. So if you have the chance to do something kind of proactive to deal with it, and when I say proactive, I kind of mean like dress down and Spreading Seas because they allow you to deal with the saga and draw a card. So you're progressing your game plan while also dealing with the tokens. So, boop. Opponent's got this Pyrite Spellbomb here, so they might take out an Orcish Bowmaster because they're going to need to crack these baubles if they want to get back in the game. And if they're going for the Pyrite Spellbomb, I'm a little bit under the assumption that they might not have another removal spell. Like if they intentionally tutor up a way to deal with Bowmaster instead of tutoring up a way like a, I don't know, Shadow Spear or something that can help grind them a little bit farther, then I'm assuming they don't have an answer for the Bowmaster, which is why I like flash in the second one there in response to the bauble. Help get this army a little bit bigger. If I thought that they had an answer and like something big to do, then I'd probably sit back and wait until end of turn to flash in the Bowmaster. But it's whatevs. All right, get in with army token. They can make a construct, but it's only 3/3. Get down Shadow. So I know one of their cards is Ramanap Ruins. I do not know the other 3. But I know I've got Counterspell. And there's anything I know about the game Magic the Gathering, it's a counterspell is pretty solid. Here, not blocking because opponents already played their land for the turn, so I know they can't have like land double bolt or something. So as soon as they put Swift Spear on the stack and tap out, then we are clear to counterspell, untap, fatal push a token, and have lethal. So Bowmaster there, better than Raise the Alarm. We're like 1-1 right now on Bowmasters. On to round number 3. Very reactive hand, which means very bad into Ragavan. So it looks like opponents on blue-red Murktide, no companion, turn 1 Ragavan. Never mind. Not Murktide, just another breach list. Consider to try to see if I can find an answer to something. So one of the reasons I considered in response to the Emery is if they had a follow-up like Mox Amber, then they might be able to spell pierce the consider into turn. So I'd have to respond to that anyway. But here, yeah, we just kind of flood out pretty hard. We already talked about sideboarding against the Jeskai Breach deck, boarding out like some Wraiths, couple Thoughtseizes, couple Bowmasters, bring in Spreading Seas, Spreading Seas, Dress Down, Dolphy, stuff like that. I could also see taking a very minimalistic sideboarding approach. Because, like, ultimately, this is a matchup that we're pretty favored against just with, like, our main deck. Hand disruption, counter spells, big threats. Kind of does most of everything we want. So you could absolutely get away with not going too crazy on sideboarding. Hey, we get to do the thing. The thing where we Spreading Seas the Saga. And I think here, yeah, hold up this turn. I'm considering just Spreading Seizing the Hallowed Fountain to cut them off white. Because they could have not only Teferis, but they could have like prismatic endings, Surge of Salvation, something. So kind of decided to go that route. See if we find a counter spell, which we do not. Grinding Station's fine. We just know that now we have to fight over Underworld Breach. They've got the bubble in the yard, they've got the Grinding Station out. Like, we cannot afford to let them resolve an Underworld Breach. Instead, we got Saga in a ring. If you don't know this interaction, Bowmaster can shoot the army token off the draw trigger because the army is going to amass to that second power as the ping from Bowmaster is resolving. All happens at once. So there's no like intermission there. Just in case your opponent rings and you need a Bowmaster target and like don't want to hit yourself. All right, so drawing back-to-back counter spells is actually huge here. Didn't want to attack into them because of the constructs, but opponent decides to go ahead and sack off their ring to Grinding Station, which means, hey, like, I'm in pretty good shape now. We've got the constructs answered. We make them use up their mana. We go for the Shadow Spear. We get the Dress Down, and like, hey, now we're attacking. We've got double counterspell. We're the aggressor here. I'll take a Thoughtseize. Like, I'm at a high enough life total. I don't believe these decks really run a bunch of lightning bolts. I think they're mostly Unholy Heat. we see Pithing Needle, Spell Pierce, the Ring, Scalding Tarn. So we're definitely taking the Ring. Top deck Emery is honestly fine. So we know their hand perfectly. Tarn, Pierce, Pithing Needle. We get to double fetch up a couple planes. Go ahead and dismember the Emery. Save our counter magic. And pay for Spell Pierce. And yeah, we're going to pass the turn with triple counter spell. Seems okay. So let's go to game 3. Game numero tres. And really good hand on the draw. Like, we've got answer for a turn 1 Ragavan. Thoughtseize, fantastic pickup off the top. We've got Hearst to fight over the graveyard. Opponent's grinding, stationing. All right, so we could have gotten down Shadow there and like held up Consider or something. But I wanted to fight over this Teferi if they found a white source here, like a fetch land for a white source. Unfortunately, they did not, so we're just going to have to kill the Emery, untap, play a Shadow, hold up Stub, you know, all of the boring stuff. Yeah, and as soon as your opponent starts, like, sacking Sagas to get a Mishra's Bauble, you feel pretty good. They do have the heat, but we've got the Stub, and, like, now we're pretty much coasting. I can play out the Hearse, hold up Drown in the Lock, or just play out a big Murktide, you know? Yeah, navigated those first few turns pretty well, and very, very much got rewarded. Opponent stumbled a little bit, didn't see the third land for Teferi, or to make construct tokens, so kind of run them over. So match number 4 on the draw. This is like more flooded strands than I've seen in a league in a while. Another Jeskai Grinding Station Underworld Breach deck. So that's 3 times paired up against this deck this league. They did not have that Ragavan in their opening hand. So we're going to have a discussion about that. But I'm guessing that this deck is kind of rising in popularity based on the ring being around. You get to play Urza's Saga, so you can tutor up a Pithing Needle for the ring at will. You get to play your own rings, but more importantly than any of that, you get a combo kill. If your opponent taps out on like turn 4 for their own ring, you have the option to just untap, play a Grinding Station, play an Underworld Breach, combo kill your opponent with the fastest Oracle right there because it says I win. It doesn't say target you for anything. So I suppose that's a pretty good reason to play some reaches right now. All right. So I wish we had a 4th land, but at the same time, we've got Bowmaster to shoot down Ragavan or to provide a couple chump blockers. Shadow of Mortality is kind of standing up to some constructs. We know they have Unholy Heat in hand and an Iteration. Since they're tapped out, I do get to kill off a couple construct tokens. But really all I can do is like try to Bowmaster Ragavan, get a chump blocker, like trade with a construct or something. I could have killed another token and traded with that one with the Shadow of Mortality, but I think that's like a play to not lose, not a play to win line. I think the only way that I'm winning is keeping this Shadow of Mortality around. I could have stubborn denied the expressive iteration, but then I was dead to the constructs attacking in. Blocking with 2 halves of Bowmaster because I know they have Unholy Heat, and I don't want them killing off my Shadow of Mortality. Then this Shadow Spear giving me some fits. I wish that I had a Fatal Push, because then I could attack with the Shadow of Mortality, flash in Bowmaster, like Fatal Push the Shadow Speared up construct, and have Stub for the Unholy Heat. And I do need to mention this as soon as we get to it. That was a punt. I should have just let the grinding station resolve. The grinding station doesn't matter. If they follow it up with a breach, I can still stub the breach, but the grinding station itself just doesn't matter. I could let them attack and put like Murktide on the 8/8, Shadow of Mortality on the 7/7, and that would be unfortunate, but it's whatever. Like, I go to my turn, empty board, they've got a bunch of life. I've got Bowmasters and a counterspell. Or a counterspell and a stub. But because I let that resolve, now I can't hold up any counter magic. I have to block the construct token. I could throw both the Murktide and the Shadow of Mortality in front of the construct, but I really, really don't like that. So my only out, I think, is my opponent messing up and just taking this trade instead of Unholy Heating my Shadow of Mortality. But they go for the heat and kill me with trample damage. So maybe I'm supposed to just go ahead and double block, but I really feel like if they have an answer for the Murktide, like a second Unholy Heat or something, I just kind of lose on the spot. So I feel behind enough to the point where I kind of have to make my opponent make a mistake. But this is game 2, I believe. Yeah, game 2, because we get Spreading Seas, we get Dolthy. We could have gone for turn 2 Dolthy there, but if my opponent had like Unholy Heat for Dolthy, untap, play something decent, then I'm getting really behind. So instead, we're just going to Dismember the Emery, untap, Spreading Seas, the Urza Saga. We fetch and shock, so if we find another land like that, we get down Shadow. So getting to strip mine your opponent, play out a Shadow. Pretty good sequence of events. Now I want to hold up Drown in the Lock in case of something like Teferi. Spellbomb's fine. Like, still flash in Bowmaster and like keep the pressure up even if they bounce my Shadow. Island's honestly good because now I can play out Dolthy, hold up Drown in the Lock, or just replay the Shadow, whatever the case may be. The important thing here is I really don't want to tap off of Drown in the Lock, because now we're in the point of the game where combo or getting combo killed becomes a reality. And if I tap off of Drown, then that's something that can very easily happen. At least now they're tapped off of red on my turn, so they can't like end a turn on Holy Heat. So this puts them in a position where they have to have the combo plus an Unholy Heat. Obviously, if they had like an Underworld Breach here, then that kind of takes care of all issues. But instead, it is just a ring, which at the moment, Bowmaster can outrace the ring. They Surge of Salvation so that I can't ping them. Pretty heads up play. But unfortunately, like, I can ping Imri. Second copy of the ring. And I guess they just like didn't draw anything relevant there in all those draws. So we'll take it. It's a lot of draws to not see anything relevant, but you know. Game 3 on the draw. We do have answer to a Ragavan, which I think is really important. Spell Pierce my Thoughtseize. That's okay. Could have been Surge of Salvation as well, now that I've seen that card. And then opponent playing turn 2 non-saga and pass. This is fantastic for me. Like, anytime in the first 2 or 3 turns of the game, if your opponent just like plays land and passes and doesn't do anything, that is the greatest feeling in the world. So been a counterspell. Counterspell's good, but like it's not great in the face of Saga. So I'd rather just find more lands, be able to kind of set up my clock. Now I can also hold on to Bowmaster and kill a Saga token that they make, but I've got the dress down already. I don't really care about Bowmastering a Saga on my end step. But instead, if they go for a construct, I get to dismember, get down Shadow, and hold up Drown in the Lock. So like my tempo plan there gets kind of skyrocketed forward by just waiting. Let's pause. So opponent goes for an Unholy Heat on the Shadow. I have 2 thoughts here. One, it's you missed the land drop last turn. You've got a Mox Amber that makes blue. Why are you going for an Unholy Heat here when you know I can save this Shadow? My only thought is they have something else to do. So probably like a Fury is my best guess, because they're not running Giganta. They've got to have a 2-mana, 2-pip card somewhere, because if not, you just run Giganta. So Fury is like my big guess. It's the only thing that to me makes this make sense. Now I could let the Unholy Heat resolve and counter the Fury, which I probably should have done, but I'm kind of in this thought of maybe I get to untap and like, I don't know, have a good chance. But I guess at the same time, if they have Spell Pierce, then nothing I do matters, because I Drown and Lock the Unholy Heat. They Spell Pierce, then they Fury. If they resolve Unholy Heat, go for Fury. I Drown and Lock, they Spell Pierce. So Spell Pierce beats whatever. But I should have let this Unholy Heat resolve and then planned on like drowning the Fury if that's what they had. But with this dress down, like I really didn't want to risk anything happening to the Shadow. Maybe they found another land and they were going to go 3rd land, 2nd Unholy Heat. Maybe like I'm overthinking the Fury thing. But I really wanted to just set up like untap, dress down my Shadow, and kill it. And they did have 2nd Unholy Heat and Fury, which I thought was kind of crazy. So like we were both right and wrong at the same time. We called the Fury, we called the 2nd Unholy Heat. They just didn't have the 3rd land. But either way, we're gonna hit our opponent in the face for a lot, because there's not really much they can do for 3 mana there. If they had 4 mana, there's the chance of combo killing, but at 3 mana, oh boy. Turn 1, Burning Inquiry, ditch, double Lotlith Troll, Asmarano, Mordekaiser, Kuldakar. Turn 2, 2nd Burning Inquiry. We have to throw away our Bowmaster. I say have to, like I didn't choose to throw away the Bowmaster. Bowmaster chose the thug life and went out on its own terms. But opponent's down to 4 cards. We do have double drown in the lock. Bloodghast. Root Wall is pretty okay. We'll take another drown. I get down to shadow. 2 cards in hand against our triple drown. Blood Geezy coming in hot. Oval Chase Daredevil. Okay. So opponent's down to 1 card in hand. We can Fatal Push this Root Walla, get in a big attack, put our opponent on a 2-turn clock if they hit us again, or if we find another way to lose life. Otherwise, we're just going to sit on our counter spells. So I drew this Thoughtseize. I should have just cast it and gone for lethal because I have like the double drown in the lock. But my thought was, oh, they could have lightning bolt, or honestly, I've gotten terrified in the last couple days because I ran into a burn opponent that was running main deck Exquisite Firecraft, and that card has scared me since. If you don't know Exquisite Firecraft, it's 2 red and a colorless, deals 4 damage to any target, and if you have was it Spell Mastery, like 2 or more instants or sorceries in the graveyard, then it's uncounterable. And now I'm just like, oh, everybody's running Exquisite Firecraft. So if I don't have to go down below 5, I'm not going down below 5. I'm just going to sit on my double drown in the lock. I'm not going to risk it. Game 2, turn 2, Neonate into Neonate plus Root Walla, get back Vengevine. Pretty scary stuff. I was hoping that this like turn 2 Hearse on the draw would be good enough. But against my opponent dropping 6 power into play, not so much. Make that 8 power into play. Then I should have just gotten down Shadow of Mortality here instead of going for the Hearse. My thought process was, okay, I have Hearse to hit Vengevine and something else. They hit me for 4. I go to 4. Next turn, I drop down Shadow of Mortality, and kind of like clog up the ground. But I went for Hearse. They went for Burning Inquiry. Immediately flipped over Ox of Agonis. I don't get a priority opportunity to exile the Ox. So they just get that back right away. And yeah, that's a rough one. Get our Shadow of Mortality down so I can block the Ox, drown and lock the Root Walla. Can't do anything about the Vengevine, so we got to go to game 3. Oof. It's a big oof for me. All right. Game number 3. On the play. Very, very painful hand with the double Thoughtseize, Dismember, double fetch. But if we do find a threat, which obviously very optimistic, then we can get a very quick clock on them with like a Shadow or a Shadow of Mortality. Take the Lotleth Trolls, so I don't have to waste a removal spell on that, because if they play second Neonate, I just get to EE, wipe up both of those. I want to pop EE on my turn so that they can't get the discount on Hollow One from discarding 2 cards. They do find a Bloodghast, so not looking great for us. Got 3 cards, one of which is a Hollow One of which is apparently a Blazing Root Walla. Make them invest the mana into the Root Walla and then go ahead and Fatal Push it. So Dolphy, Dismember the Dolphy instead of counterspelling it, because at this point of the game, like, counterspell is way more important than dismember, because I need to be able to fight with things like Underworld Cookbook on the stack, Ox of Agonis on the stack, and I've got the mana to be able to hold it up. So go for this attack here to make this a 2-turn clock. I'm not dead to the Bloodghast or the Root Walla. I get to fight over the Vengevine on the stack. And I guess opponent forgot that Bloodghast can't block because they made this attack in. I get to attack back for lethal. And yeah, like, we would have been in a decent spot anyway, even if they hadn't have made that attack, because we forced the chump block on the Root Walla, play the Shadow of Mortality, and now we've got like double attackers. They can't block with the Bloodghast. They got to hit something like pretty special off the top of the library. But anyway, really nice trophy league there. Beating that Jeskai Fair Breach deck 3 times was pretty clutch. We did notice that all 3 games, so we played 9 total games against Jeskai Breach. The 3 games that we lost were all game 1s. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that we just, like, aren't in the mindset for that matchup game 1, and it really shows. So game 1's a lot about not getting combo killed, obviously, but we are the aggressor in the matchup for sure. Like, we've got to get our opponent dead. They've got the sagas and stuff for the inevitability. We need to get a Murktide or a Shadow or Shadow Mortality. But that's not really like what we're geared to look for game 1. If it was, we would completely rework the deck to be more all in on getting a threat down. But we are way more of the control deck game 1, and then have to board into being the aggressor, bring in like the dress downs, spreading seas, Dolphy to kind of proactively answer stuff and get attacks in. The mono red artifact burn deck was pretty cool. Got to see Bomat Courier in 2023. Love that. And then seeing Hollow One, which should be like a Bowmaster, like, fever dream of a matchup, but instead we just like didn't see Bowmasters against it, but still managed to win. So that's really, really sweet. Yeah, not too much to say. Like, if you're expecting a bunch of Jeskai Breach in the leagues, then obviously we see that Dimir has a pretty good matchup there. Otherwise, yeah, Stern Scolding. People have asked about that card. I think I have cast Stern Scolding 1 time against Hammer Time to counter a Giver of Runes. Only time I've cast the card. I didn't even bring it in against the Breach matchup, and it hits Imri, Ragavan, Ledger Shredder if they're on that, Darcy if they're on that. Hits a reasonable number of stuff, but I just didn't feel like I wanted it. So I'm really not sure like what matchups I want Stern Scolding for. So I'm going to try it out a little bit more until I get a better feel for it. Dolphy was pretty great. The Swamp didn't mess me up much. I know there was one opening hand that I mulliganed, and I might have skipped through it pretty quick, but it was like a basic Swamp with Consider, Counterspell, Murktide, Stubborn Denial, and maybe like a Dress Down or something. And I meant to make a comment about it, like, this is why you don't run basic Swamp, because the 1 land Consider hands are just like out the window, and then looking at like Consider, Stub, Counterspell with basic Swamp and being like, uh. So I'll go back and try to narrow down which game that was. Might leave something about it in the comments. The other card that I've seen people ask about a lot recently is Sauron's Ransom. It's one a blue and a black for an instant. Um, Something like target opponent, or you reveal the top four, or target opponent looks at the top 4 cards of your library, puts some number face up, some number face down. You like pick one pile, put it in your hand, the other pile goes in the graveyard. It's like Fact or Fiction ish. I've tried it a little bit, like 2 leagues worth, and I did not like it because of the randomness. So we kind of have to talk about like the average versus the floor of the card. And essentially what happens is the average is look at, or like the average is 3 mana, draw 2 at random from the top 4 cards of your library, because you have no control over whether you drew the best 2 or the worst 2. Sometimes you're going to get the best 2, like your opponent puts like great face down, you draw it, cool. Sometimes you're going to get the worst 2. So it's completely random. As much as you want to say, oh, I'm really good at mind games, or you're going to be getting a certain floor with being able to see the face up pile, or whatever the case may be, it's random. You can argue me all you want, but you're wrong. It's random. The floor of the card is going to be 3 mana, get the worst 2 out of the top 4. So random 2, average, worst 2 is the floor. I know there's going to be comments like, well, actually the floor is your opponent puts 4 face up and you pick the face down pile. I don't care about those just meme scenarios. Floor of the card is like worst 2. Worst 3 is actually better than worst 2, because at least you got 3 cards for it. But worst 2. And then the magical Christmas land scenario is, oh, I big brain my opponent and they put counterspell face up and I took the face down pile and it was like counterspell, Murktide, whatever the case may be. But you can't rely on that happening frequently, so I'm not even going to like entertain that idea. But 3 mana for a random 2 off the top 4 cards of your library, I think is not worth it. I would rather be working with like known information instead of this mental energy being used towards a mind game of pile A, pile B. So I'm not really interested in playing Sauron's Ransom. That being said, if any of y'all have played it or are playing it and have had really good results with it or have some insight, I would love to hear it, because like I said, I have not played a lot of the card. So I'm not claiming to have some incredibly informed decision on it. It's just based off what I have played and what I've seen of the card. I've not been impressed with it, so I don't think I'm going to be trying it out much going forward. But love to hear from y'all, because obviously y'all's experiences are different than mine. That'll be it for this video. As always, have the links to everything down below. If you are enjoying it, again, like or comment or subscribe would be absolutely fantastic at helping grow the channel. Otherwise, I will catch y'all all back later. Hope y'all have an awesome rest of your day. Stay safe. Enjoy some good food and company. I will catch y'all back live later. Adios for now.